hold it in a little differently. Yeah.
And I'm having spine surgery on the 26th of this month. So,
How long will you be in for that?
Can I change?
it's in and out, like they make me hold me overnight.
That's great.
Carol Holmes.
So,
Have you had any?
oh yeah, I've had
Put it over
tons
here.
of orthopedic surgeries,
surgeries
just
All right. 6:30, guys, right on cue. Are we live, Ms. Robitel?
Same doctor.
We are live.
We're live, okay. We're all good to go. It's 6:30. It's time to get going. So welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us for the Parks and Planning Committee meeting for today, April 16th, 2024. And we'll start out by doing a roll call
Okay. Chair Galani,
here.
Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Here.
Councilmember Marshall,
Present.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Here.
Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
and Councilmember Flasher. And that's four.
Awesome. Okay, thank you all for being here. Second, we'll go into approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the committee's meeting on March 19th, 2024? Councilmember Marshall, seconded by Councilmember Ottenberg. Any discussion on that? Seeing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? All right, thank you very much. We got that done. Do we have anybody for public participation? I don't see anybody here live, but
No, and that's Chris. If anybody would like to speak in the meeting, please raise your hand now and we'll promote you to a panelist.
never hold your peace. All right. We don't have any for that, so we'll move on to our action items, which we'll start out with planning matters. We have 4 items for consideration this evening, and so we're gonna start off with item number 1, which is the Crestview Drive Rights of Access and Use, Ward 8, Director Budich.
Thank you, Chair Galani. Chair Galani and members of the committee, we appreciate you attending tonight, so thank you very much. Can't do our collective jobs without you, so it's much appreciated. First item tonight is not necessarily for action, but the department thought it was important to kind of update you on Crestview Drive. At the last city council meeting on April 8th, a legal representative of North Latitude 38, the development proposal that's on the south side of Crestview Drive at its intersection with Etherton Road, took the opportunity to comment during public participation about the Village Green project, Crestview Drive, et cetera, et cetera. And the department wants to ensure the committee members that we aren't doing anything wrong, despite the kind of innuendo or just the discussion in it onto itself. We, for the most part, understand the rights of Crestview Drive. They've been explained to us on multiple occasions by different people. And I can assure you, the references in the memorandum, we are defining access to our village green via City Hall and Main Street. And so tonight, I just kind of wanted to highlight some of the things that we've been doing over the course of time to ensure that eventually Crestview Drive is the true connection we need between downtown district and Route 109. And as I've mentioned, the city council has been very proactive in this regard, particularly over the last couple of years. This year, we have $4 million set aside for design and engineering of Crestview Drive, or in this case, future Main Street extension. Why the city council was asked to engage in that allocation was quite simply that when McBride Homes and North Latitude 38 proposed their projects, we were being reactive to them. We were designing the road based upon their projects. And we thought in this particular instance, it might be better if the city designed the road they want and have the projects on either side of the street comply to that, $250,000. The city council took it the next step though and said in 2025, $1 million was set aside to begin construction. And construction would be contingent also on rights, but also hopefully having projects that are queued up or nearing queue, so to speak, so that they can participate as well. As it is also noted, we own 6 acres of ground in that area, and we also purchased the spite strip that was created right at the end of Crestview Drive parcel of ground to basically preclude future extension. We purchased that spite strip, and we now have that issue resolved. Also, over the course of time, we have been working with the residents on Crestview Drive. Many of the properties now are rentals. Folks like Virgil Smith have passed, and longtime residents that used to anchor that street are no longer there. And so from that perspective, as I say, we used to regularly talk to them about dedicating just a portion of their property, the frontage, for future Main Street. And many of them wanted us to buy it all. And at that time, that was just not a feasible approach, and it isn't today, quite frankly. So here's the things that we are doing to ensure that you as City Council can talk to your constituents or others and say, we understand Crestview Drive. So first and foremost, when people contact us about Crestview Drive, we explain it's a private street. That the owners of that street are the collective lot owners, and the city being one, but we don't have the right to transfer all of it to public purposes. And so we tell them that. We also tell them we have a great alternative. Just a block to the north, we built a multiple use trail along Route 100 that connects to the same locations that Crestview Drive does. And it's open to the public 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We've also talked with Bombshell Construction, our contractor for phase 1 of Village Green, and advised him that all deliveries, all equipment, all work, all employee parking will be this side, meaning Main Street, City Hall, and the area in its vicinity. And as you'll recall during the interview of Mr. Dobb, he specifically said he's already planning on putting up additional signs on Etherton Road in the area of Crestview Drive, indicating no construction traffic, things like that. And then finally, as you know, we do own 2 lots, so we do have rights, and we can work within those 2 lots to provide pedestrian access, et cetera, whatever we may feel is appropriate to ensure that Village Green phase 1 is successful. The only thing that I do want to comment on and maybe apologize a little bit for is the fact that in phase 1, we've shown that little trail segment coming out and exiting onto Crestview Drive. And that trail segment, or the trails, are natural surface types, and they are to be done as it's shown on the plan by others, that's meaning us. We were going to come back in and kind of just lay out an informal system of natural surface trails for people to walk. We'll easily address that connection and just show it as a loop, starting and ending here, so anywhere on Crestview Drive. So we'll make those changes as we move forward. But again, we're in a good position as the thought for the future describes. We own 2 lots. We have some obviously some property owners that were willing to sell the McBride homes, which means there's at least an idea that the future isn't necessarily what's there right now. And so from that perspective, we'll keep working toward a successful solution to Crestview Drive and Main Street. And if there are any questions of Melanie, Tom, or I, we'd be glad to answer them at this time.
Councilman Rodberg?
The small strip of land that you referred to that we purchased, when did that purchase take place?
It was at the time when we purchased the last lot. We purchased the lot immediately adjoining City Hall from the owner of that. It was Ray Brockard. His wife had passed, and so he sold. The other we were trying to buy at a tax sale, and someone outbid us, but immediately contacted the city and said, I'll be glad to sell it to you. So he made a profit, but at that time we also purchased the spite strip.
And when was that roughly?
Around 2018, that's when all of those.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Clark?
Thank you. Yes, I had a couple of questions. One is that alternate path. is that accessible by a wheelchair? I know that at least one of the residents that comes to the Music on Main, he said that he comes down Crestview on his wheelchair and across the dirt path through when the trees were there. So I was just wondering if this alternate path will be accessible for him.
Well, the natural surface trails probably will not because we'll grade them level and do our best. But they're intended to basically be a mulch type surface, a soft surface. But everything, as you know, and where the trash enclosure is now located here at City Hall, those will be our accessible spaces. And there is accessible sidewalks that'll lead you to the accessible oval. So, and a portion of the oval is that decomposed granite, which is perfect for a wheelchair to basically stage and watch the concert wherever they would. And again, the way the oval is designed, the stage is on the easternmost end, so there really isn't a bad seat around the oval, so to speak.
Okay, so and that grade and that's up to the path that goes to the oval, that's wheelchair accessibly
Yes, ma'am.
accessible? Okay, thanks. And then the second thing I had was, does this section of Crestview, does it keep up with our standards that we require in the town center for private roads? It looked quite bad on those pictures that I saw. I don't go down that very often, so I just didn't know if it was keeping up with our maintenance. Do we have a maintenance plan for that? And are we keeping up with it?
Well, it does not meet even our rural roadway standard, which is probably still a good standard for rural roads, but for town center, obviously we have a greater requirement or requirements. According to Mr. Bosworth and at least a couple of owners previous to him, like Mr. Schmidt, there is no formal road maintenance agreement. And so the neighbors usually just get together and they would pitch in money to fix potholes and pay for snow and ice removal. Since the city's owned the properties in 2018, we've not been, at least I haven't, as the department, have been approached by any of the owners seeking funds to help pay for any improvements or snow and ice removal. So it's very informal. Certainly, we can do more if we choose to. But at this stage, we are not accessing it for any purposes. So we've always kind of just wait and see.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome now.
Councilmember Rambo.
Yes, I have several questions. I have a couple questions on the Village Green, but I'll hold those to the right
Sure.
time. Is latitude 38 still in play?
Well, it is scheduled to come to city council for that appeal hearing on May 13th.
But have they made any substantial or substantive changes to the what we saw as the inadequate drainage and visual screening and all those kinds of things?
They have not. The conversations I've had with Mr. Bosworth and Mr. Levinson have just been about the appeal process. That's it.
Okay, it kind of seems, we kind of have an antagonistic relationship with them, unfortunately. And if, I feel like if we could work with them and they could develop a decent plan, we might be sort of home free. But that leads me to my next question. We loan 2 lots. I mean, we own 2 lots. Why is it that if construction is occurring on 2 lots owned by the city, we can't use that road as access? Because if someone else bought those properties, they could build a home there. I guess they're legally entitled to build a home there because they own 1/8 or whatever of the road. Why is it that we're having such trouble with the construction process at Village Green?
Well, we can access it. We own two shares of the 13 total shares. And so Mr. Young, our city attorney, has said, yes, we can access it for our purposes, city purposes, just like any other owner of property. I think we're doing it, we're not encouraging it for 2 reasons, Councilmember Rambo. The first is just to be respective and a good neighbor.
Uh-huh.
And secondly, I think the Main Street access works better.
Because so are there any of the original, 30 or 35-year-old homeowners left on that street, or is it all renters?
I believe there may be one or two.
Okay, Ed, do you know anything about their attitude toward the village green and giving up a little bit of right of way and so forth?
Well, previously that was, I'm not interested, or you need to buy the entire 3 acres of property. The one that is there was one of the two actually had a contract with McBride Homes, so obviously they were willing to sell, again, all of the property. The other is at the end here, and at one time they made an offer to the city for us to purchase this lot on the east end of Crestview Drive on its north side. At that time, we didn't have funds available to accomplish that, so we didn't pursue.
That place is vacant, right?
Actually, there's a tenant in there.
Is there?
There's a cousin.
So can you tell me, I'm sorry if I'm taking up
No.
extra time, but I think it's important to me, and I maybe I'm the only dummy that doesn't understand it, but roughly where does the does the ownership extend to the middle of the road? Is that how they broke that down, or?
The road is situated in a parcel of ground that's 25 feet wide.
Oh, okay.
So it's a parcel of ground. So the northern boundary of Village Green and the southern boundary of the parcel of ground that's known as Crestview Drive, for all intents and purposes, is the southern edge of the asphalt surface.
Okay, so and where do we envision Main Street going? And the reason for this is, I'm wondering how much land we're actually asking for on the north side, if we could put a little bit of a curve and, I mean, it seems unreasonable for them not to be willing to sell us an easement of a few feet, particularly since these lots are very large in town center terms. This would benefit seems like it would benefit their property values, and so unless I'm missing something, we're not asking for much.
Well, so just what the city is requesting is 70 feet of right of way.
Inclusive of the 25 feet.
So we've got 10 feet on the north side.
Okay.
That's what McBride's Homes was dedicating, 25 feet, and then 35 feet on the south side. That way it aligns the best with the current dimensions of Main Street.
So we actually only need 10 feet on the north, which we could probably arrange more easily than the 35 feet or whatever on the south side with the additional homes to the west. Is that?
Well, again, it's negotiation on either an easement or dedication with, let's say, 8 property owners on the north side. And on the south side, there's 2 lots that the city owns, and then there's 3 that are part of Latitude North 38.
Okay, so,
Could you put the map back up
yeah,
that we had? And just latitude 38 go all the way
Goes from the
city.
eastern side of Etherton Road.
Yeah.
There's Mr. Bosworth's old house, a L-shaped property with the house on Etherton Road, and then what used to be Judy and John Jones's property.
so we're asking them for the ditch on the north side of the road is what we're asking them for.
Really, 10 feet, that's.
Yeah, we're asking for the ditch, and then we can work it out separately with the latitude 38 north. It seems ridiculous for people not to cash in, because that wouldn't devalue their land a penny if a developer wanted to buy it and reassemble it.
When Andre Strelani was in town a long time ago, and they completed the 5-day charrette and did the presentation. He didn't do it once, he didn't do it twice, he did it many times during that presentation, saying frontage adds value to your property. Frontage adds value to your property. If people can see it, people will want it, and they'll buy it. And we've not been able to convince a lot of people.
Especially an improved road, right? I mean, just to, this is a crappy road. It's one step up from gravel.
And it's locked in back.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I can't imagine why they would be so resistant, particularly now that I know it's only 10 feet of the road. And so my final question, thank you for your patience, guys. Have we, I know we are Wildwood nice and we would probably be very reluctant to do this, but I'm a serious victim of eminent domain on the highway project in the 70s. Have we looked into gaining an 10-foot easement via eminent domain on the north side, or maybe the whole thing and just be done with it?
It's a great question for closed session.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Councilor Dodwell?
I just wanted to ask on the spike strip. Do we have the right to make ingress onto our park field if we have the spike strip? Are you looking at doing improvements from the end of Main Street in whatever that distance may be, 4 feet, 5 feet, and
We are doing improvements on a portion of the spike strip as
Okay.
well as the area that abuts the parcel of ground of Crestview Drive, and that's primarily the pedestrian access.
okay,
Leads up into it,
okay,
kind of does that graceful loop.
Yeah.
Graceful climb into it. And then there's the switchbacks for the accessibility purpose.
Okay.
Yes, we're going to use the property, some of the property we purchased, regardless of what
everybody else says, yeah.
the threats have been made about you can't touch it. So
Councilor Martoni?
Sorry, thank you. So my question is more on the sign in the package that you provided, the sign that says private property. And I know there's no ordinance on there, but I mean, I would have a question more for our city attorney, like, can he legally put that sign up? Because at the end of the day, he's trying to restrict access to public property.
So the one that I took the photograph of is directly out here. And
It's on our property.
I believe it's on our property. Our city attorney said, are you 100% sure? And I said, yeah. He said, well, can you just have it surveyed, shoot a line along the common boundary, and then we'll know for sure. CDI is trying to get their survey crew out here to do basically an hour's worth of work.
Mhm.
But if you look at the engineered plans, there's a little water meter with cap that is right out there on the other side of that red crosswalk area that ends at the street there. That aligns perfectly with the southern edge of the parcel that's Crestview Drive. And if you believe that the engineer and surveyor did their job the first time, that's why I'm 100% sure. But I've been reluctant to take it until I meet the requirements of the city attorney. And the city attorney is just trying to protect the city.
Well, even if the sign's at the other end of the street, he's still telling people you can't go down this street to access public property.
And I've been
I'm
told,
just curious if he's legally allowed to do that.
I don't know the inner workings of the other, let's say, 12 property owners. They may have collectively agreed that we need to post it. We took one down that was tagged to one of our public street signs. And my intent is to take this one down. The others in the interior, I've been told not to allow.
Okay. Councilor
So
Martin?
there is no road maintenance agreement currently for those 13 lots.
Now, what I've been told is the Virgil and some of the older residents used to just walk around and
So
say.
there's nothing written where they
And
wouldn't
I-
even have the authority as having 3 lots to be able to do what they're doing either. I mean,
There is a deed that established that was done at the time the parcel of ground that Crestview Drive was situated in, and it does speak to the rights of the owners of record. And I sent all of this to Mr. Young as this kind of issue started to become more of an issue. So
I just find it interesting, they're speaking for all the other owners. And they only have three, they have one lot more than we do. And they're speaking for, that, 10 different owners, that just doesn't even make sense.
well, at the, at one of the meetings where this was being discussed, one of the owners on the north side said, I'm not against Village Green. Just want to make sure that if you're using the road, if it gets damaged, you'll fix it. And of course we would. So I don't think everybody's as adamant about it as, let's say, the development interest. But we're going to do our best to not be unneighborly. But we're also, if one of our construction vehicles goes down that road to work on the site, nobody's going to say anything from City Hall. Because we have.
It'd be hard for them to write a ticket.
Yep, and police aren't going to write one. And so we'll do our best to be good neighbors though.
Thank you.
All right, are we good? Oh, Councilmember Clark?
Yeah, so, I don't think that this would be the best solution, but I mean, I don't know how many days they've had that sign up, isn't there? And don't we have ordinance of 30 days for a temporary sign anyway?
We do for temporary banners and things along those lines. We do have trespassing signs throughout the city. They're treated a little differently. I did measure this one out here. It's under the 10 square foot requirement. Size, it's less than 10 feet in height. So again, from the perspective of the department, we'll take care of the ones that they were hanging onto our public signs and the ones that are on our property. Other than that, I think again, told to kind of keep hands off.
Okay, Councilmember Dowdell and then Councilmember Rambo.
When's bomb car get started?
Well, I kind of did in the, I'll get to it here in a few minutes.
Okay,
Yeah,
then,
yeah.
then just hold on.
'Cause
I had some questions like that too.
Councilmember Rambo.
Who? I'm not sure who to ask about this and what the appropriate venue is, but I think a closed session discussion about some of these Crestview issues is appropriate. Should it just be our next meeting, or is there gonna be a council one and we can just put a line item on that? Or I'm open to your suggestion, or actually, I guess that's a question for Tom.
Thank you, Councilmember Rambo. In this case, I would be more than happy to speak with the mayor to see if that could be put on the agenda in a closed session for the next council meeting. That being said as well, if that route doesn't work, then a closed session, I would have to speak with the city attorney to see which piece of the sunshine ordinance would actually need to be addressed in that case, but I think that could be done.
Okay, and yeah, and when you talk to him, just tell him what we're thinking here about the tiny area we're asking for on the north side, et cetera, and we can have a productive discussion. So thank you.
Thank you, most definitely.
Okay. Very good, good discussion. That will take us to our next item on the agenda, which is a donation of landscaping materials in lieu of public space and traffic generation assessment fees for Kurt's Nursery Project in Ward 1. Director Budich?
I appreciate the smiles. I had one when the offer was made.
That's great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, as you know, over the course of approximately the last year or so, the City Council, the Planning and Zoning Commission, and city personnel have been working with Matthew Kurtz on a development of approximately 15.5 acre site. That's on the west side of North Edgerton Road, north of Centaur Road. It's in the Wildwood portion of the Chesterfield Valley. For all intents and purposes, Mr. Kurtz wants to kind of replicate what Fixed Supply Services has been doing down in the valley since the late 1990s. In the memorandum that's been prepared, the department kind of goes through the steps in the zoning process, and obviously there is now a governing ordinance. The site development plan has been approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and it was received and filed by City Council at a recent meeting. Also, the structures, the buildings have been before our Architectural Review Board and received approval as well. In fact, the main office structure is a very, very nice looking, almost single family dwelling. It's going to be a nice asset in that portion of the valley compared to some. Also, the improvement plans are almost complete. Those are the actual construction drawings that'll be in the construction trailer. The general contractor and the subcontractors will use to build the project. The only delay in that particular instance with the improvement plans is the department's still waiting for the special use permit from St. Louis County that authorizes access and use of their arterial road, and we are working on that. As we've kind of worked through the steps in the process, the department has identified to the engineering firm, Bowles Engineering, and the petitioner that there are two fees that are due. One is the traffic generation assessment fee, and the other is the public space fee, since they chose not to offer any public space as part of their development. Those fees roughly come to about $22,000 in combination. And that prompted what I consider a very unusual offer. That Coach Nursery is more than willing to give us $22,000 worth of materials over the next 5 years if we would accept that through the fees. And it's not something that has ever been offered before. So from that perspective, it's new. Haven't done a lot of legal research with the city attorney because I wanted to first get your all's opinion if it's something we want to consider or not. And if it is something we want to consider, certainly we will do that background work and proceed forward if it's acceptable, and if not, we'll advise Mr. Kurtz of the situation. So tonight, I'm seeking direction.
Okay, Councilman Rambo?
Yeah, I think it's a creative solution and it might work to our benefit, to be real honest. I would first need to know, what do we spend per year on mulch? We got a lot of tree programs going forward. What do we need?
Well, in excess of $22,000.
Okay, so the next thing is, this is, mulch is a, they've got to process it and so on and so forth, and they got their overhead and costs and so forth. I understand that, but the materials are inexpensive to them, and we don't necessarily want to be in the position of giving them a big discount on the $22,000 worth of fees they would ordinarily be paying. And so I'm not sure that their offer of, I'm not clear on the numbers. There was 15,000 mentioned. He'll bump it up to 20,000. Does that mean he's going to cover the other, $22,226.91 in cash, or what? And if he's serious about this, I think it would be beneficial to us and to him if he bumped that number up, the $22,000 up a little bit further, and gave us assurance that he's not going to double the cost of his mulch next year, and we're winding up not getting what we thought we were going to get. So have you explored those questions with him, or?
Well, the department won't release any permit until such time that either this arrangement is finalized, and it'll only be finalized when an agreement is signed. And that agreement will specifically talk about what's available to the city in terms of materials, the base cost of those materials, regardless of inflation over the 5-year period.
So it could be the volume of mulch products or something like we could have, yeah, okay.
Yeah, because again, the worst case scenario is we get X amount of mulch in the first year, and then all of a sudden it jumps and double in price.
Yeah, that's my
We're
fear.
giving him the benefit of non-payment in 2024. So the cost of the mulch would have to stay, or whatever material would have to stay at that 2024 price. Because we're not going to take less money
Right.
just because we're taking it over a span of time of 5 years. And to me, I think it's a negotiation point. I think we don't pay retail. I think this is.
Yes.
From our perspective, there's a cost like you've described, and there'll be a transportation cost to where we need it delivered. We need to know that, and it's the cost with no, I would call it no profit. It's just the simple cost that you would occur with to basically provide it.
I think it's a mutual back scratching kind of a situation. I think I personally would advocate for it. If, you know, if we need to make a motion or something like that, but we probably should continue the discussion.
Yep. Councilmember Marshall?
I would think you'd write it up like you would any barter agreement, be so many yards
Mhm.
and not a dollar amount. You calculate it for this year and then it equates out to however many yards that would be at that, this year's price.
Dollars per yard and it took that for total.
It's a perfect time because as you know, with spring, we've been doing all the planting beds, we've done the community garden, we've done all the playground. Yeah, 109, 100. I mean, we've been all over with mulch the last month or so, if not more. So it's a great time because we have all the information from the contractors and the suppliers. So it would be easy to calculate that.
Okay, Councilmember Clark?
Thank you. Yeah, well, you know, I like the yardage, but then again, you know, we've talked about how costs have gone up so much lately in everything. So what if we put something in the contract like, you know, if it would be at this amount for this many yards, but if the cost went down, we would get more somehow. So, you know, so that if the price goes down for everybody else, but we're locked into this, you know, however much we lock into, we're not getting as much as everyone else at the time if the costs go down. So could we say something like that we add that the cost, I don't know, the cost that we agree on is the maximum. But if their costs go down for everyone else, that we get more out of it somehow. I guess I'm struggling to put that into words, but all of the other things that were said that Councilmember Rambo was talking about, I had those questions as well.
So it can be a discount off of their retail price, whatever that retail price happens to be. Is that, I mean, that
You
seems.
compare other retail prices against that.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
what's, you know.
but I think
What's fixed
these guys
charge,
can negotiate
what,
that
you
part.
know, yeah.
If we can.
So we could potentially negotiate based off like the actual general inflation rate of the year and then have that assessed to the amount of mulch and how that could potentially be applied unless mulch rates somehow stay very stable and then, you know, the overall cost of living still continues to increase or decrease one way or the other. But I think and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think these are both really good talking points with Kurtz.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Clark, what I would say is, as part of any negotiation, we ask for what we want up front.
Yeah.
If they say no, then we have a decision to make then, or we go to the next point, et cetera. And oftentimes what we use in terms of just tracking things, more so for inflation, is the CPI, Consumer Price Index. So if it were to drop, maybe we use that as the component, and that's what we would see in a corresponding amount. So we certainly can figure something out. It's almost like deflation versus inflation. So
You could say not to exceed current market rate.
Yeah.
You know, but.
And then, yeah,
based
certainly.
on not, you know.
Yeah.
Somebody else, Councilman Dodwell?
I'll make a motion that we move forward with developing some type of agreement. Why this is different. I think we need to be creative in the way we do things, so.
Got a motion on the floor, a second, Councilman Rottenberg? Any discussion on the motion?
Just a couple of points.
Sure.
I think it's creative on their part, as Councilmember Rambo mentioned. I also think it's a good economic development move. for helping the business move
Yeah.
into Wildwood.
Bring a business into the city of
It's a
Redwood.
win-win.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Just be prepared in the future that you could do it for Fick or for somebody else who
It's
comes.
all
in
right.
and
It's
says,
saving
"Hey,
us money, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
Yeah, I really
Should
feel like
leave
with
with
that, you know, we're not coming out on the short end. Those fees go to necessarily road improvements, but we do a lot of mulching along our roads and things like that. So I think there's a relationship there. So the next step, and I'll be quiet after that, is I'll get Mr. Lee, Ms. Ripito and I will get with the city attorney and we'll see what we
Yeah, I
come
was
up
gonna
with.
say.
I hope to have the agreement back in May.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we had a motion and a second. So all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
I,
Any opposed? And any abstentions? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Which brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is the reoccupancy permit programs development for rental properties. Second public input session and next steps. Ms. Rickfeld.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, we are back to our favorite subject. At our last meeting, the committee discussed the first public input session that we had on April 29th here at City Hall in the council chambers. After that discussion, given the number of questions that some of the committee members were still receiving, seems that there was still some confusion regarding the program and how it's going to work and such. And the committee endorsed having a second public input session to provide additional information. And also to update the website. The website does have additional information on it, which I will show you. Oh, maybe not. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay. So it goes through just a brief description of what we're doing and why, and still has the provide your input. We also added some FAQs on here that were the same FAQs that were provided at the first public input session, which just kind of goes over the what, the why, who performs it and such. And this can be buffed up. We didn't want to add too much information because nothing's been approved yet. And there is a caveat at the beginning that states that there is that some of this is subject to change. But either way, it's been we've received a lot less calls, and I don't know whether it's because of the additional information provided or if it's just because it's no longer as new as it once was. The postcard's been out for a while. But that being said, the second public input session was a little bit more challenging to figure out the best way to reach people, just because through our social media or through the website and such, people that don't live here aren't necessarily looking at that. You know, they might if they were going to move into a place, but somebody that's been renting property, you know, might not. And so we kind of put our heads together and thought that probably the most effective way to reach people would actually be sending out another postcard to the same list essentially that we sent before, minus all of the addresses we got back. And there were over 100 addresses that we've knocked off of that list. But that postcard would also give people a QR code to get to here. So chances are those people that still have questions would have answers without necessarily coming to the public input session. But the postcard would also be an invitation to, instead of a more formal public input session in which we get up and give a presentation, more like an open house kind of format in which, you know, city team members would be here to answer any questions. Should anybody actually want to come in, they're welcome to. And to address some of the concerns about city team members having to, you know, put in another night here at City Hall where it's great to be. We were suggesting that perhaps we do it before our next meeting from 5 to 6, because we will be here anyway. And so therefore we can have the open house, and if any of the committee members would like to join or sit in on it, absolutely welcome. But then it would still allow for discussion at the next meeting in regards to any additional, you know, input that we've gotten since then, and add that onto the list of concerns and questions that we had the last go around, and see where we go from here. So tonight, the department is seeking direction on A, if this sounds like a good idea for the second public input session, we can move forward with that, get that scheduled. B, sending out postcards in order to get the word out to those that don't actually live here but might own property that's rental property. And or any suggestions that if there's something that we're not thinking of, you know, as to how to reach people, we would love that feedback as well.
Okay, Councilmember Cadwell.
I'll make that motion that we move forward with that. I've got a couple of questions, if that's okay. Number one, on that postcard, you said you would also put a QR code that would point them to this website so they could go through it themselves. I think that's a good thing. Number two, would we take that input at the May meeting and then make a decision on whether we go with what we've got, or do you want to wait until June and make that final decision?
We could go either way. So whatever the committee is comfortable with, and it could be a decision that's made that night at the meeting.
Okay.
Because we will have more information, and if there is a substantial amount of new information, then maybe we decide to move forward with it in June. But we could have everything ready at that meeting so that if you did want to proceed with legislation and onto city council, we could go that direction too. So.
Okay,
Perfect.
so we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second it with some more discussion.
Yeah.
Second, okay, so we've got a motion, a second. Now we go to discussion. So we got Councilman Rambo and then I'll come back to you next.
Okay, so this should be really quick. The first thing is, how many surrounding communities do this? Because we could get accused yet again, I think unfairly, of Wildwood overreach, and we're, more regulations and so on and so forth. We're just kind of falling into the mainstream of surrounding communities. Is that not the case?
No, that is correct.
Okay,
Many
so we should make
communities
that,
throughout the metro area.
we should make that very clear in whatever we send out, just ridiculously clear.
Sure.
And the other question is, these mailers cost several $1,000s, as I understand it. Have we looked into like maybe just putting the QR code in the Gazette and the weekly email and all those kinds of things, and maybe a couple of signs up around town center and see if, because I would hate to see us spend $5,000 on a mailer and then have 6 more people come up to that open house. It's just depressing.
I wouldn't necessarily disagree with it is sad that such a small turnout showed up at City Hall. However, given the number of questions that we received, I feel that the information did get to a great number of people that would be most impacted.
Okay, that's your
I
judgment then. That's fine.
think it's probably the best way to
Okay.
reach people.
Councilmember Marshall?
So do we know exactly, what would the county tell you the average failure rate is when they go in to do a first inspection? 30% fail, 40% fail?
The county did not give me any sort of any kind of guidance as far as that's
Could
concerned.
we ask that question and just see?
Could ask that question. I can tell you that from my own experience with occupancy inspections in other cities, that I would say more than 50% of them fail the first go around, which is why the second inspection is included in the fees. Just so that, and a lot of times it's just minor things, or
Right.
GFI outlets, something like that.
That's a lot of scheduling for an inspector and for people to have some understanding of what to expect. in
Sure.
order to do it. Second, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sorry, most of the people that I spoke with were owners of rental property, and a lot of them owned properties in other municipalities and are used to this. And so it was more questions of when, than how, and
So the homeowners associations, because they're the kind of ones that are left out there, they know that the renters are living in the houses. Did we send, I know we sent them a postcard, did we just send them an email do we have enough email addresses to say, hey, because they could put it in their newsletter too. So
sure,
it's another
absolutely, that's an excellent suggestion.
way of trying to get it communicated, because they'll tell you who those people are that are landlords that may not be the highest esteemed level, but it could be. And the other question would be once we get it passing it out there, I think it would be another good thing to let Metro West know when people are calling for an inspection, to let them know they need to get this one from the county and then from the city as well, just to kind of close the loop. Yeah, thanks.
Or any of the other fire districts that have these kinds of buildings in them.
Director Village?
If I may.
Sure.
Mr. Chair. In regards to the other municipalities around Wildwood that require reoccupancy, I think our map genius could probably do a very nice map that we could display at the open house that shows this isn't just us, there's all of these other communities in close proximity, if that's okay with the committee. And I guess the good news on the postcard is we're not sending it to 13,000 households. I think we did, what, 2,000?
I think it was just right around 1,000. And then some of those
So that's
addresses,
maybe a grand.
yeah,
So
and some of
it's-
those addresses have been knocked off just from
So it's not
elimination.
as an expensive of a proposition as it was, as we do for like board meetings or for the entire city, which is very, very expensive.
Councilmember Clark?
Thank you, but City Administrator Lee has also had his hand up for quite some time.
Yeah, I didn't know who was first or not. Do you want to go first, Tom, or?
No, Councilmember Clark, thank you, Chair, but Councilmember Clark can surely go first. Thank you, Ms. Clark.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I have some other questions about this, but sticking to the motion. Would it be possible, I don't know how much it costs, but to put something in West Magazine as well under their city happenings or something along with the QR code? Because there might be other people that are considering rental units in Wildwood that also have questions and want to be included in that notification. And maybe some that we've missed, not knowing all of the rental availability in the city. So could we put something in the West Magazine to, I don't know how much that was.
It would be about with your permission, Chair.
Sure, go ahead.
It would be around 500, depending on the size of the advertisement. It would be $500 to $2,500 for that ad in the West News Magazine. So that could exceed a little bit more than we could probably do more of a mailer type deal, and this kind of ties into what I was wanting to maybe discuss and have an open discussion about in general too. As well, two things. One, and just to bring this up to maybe have which one might be more effective, and this maybe be an option with that QR code that would be sent out. Would we maybe want to have the QR code direct the individual to the actual input page? I know Melanie has done a great job putting together a form that allows a resident to, provide their input. So would it be maybe best to have that QR code direct them directly to that page where they can provide that direct input, and then have something clearly stated on the input form that, hey, for FAQ and general information about the program, please click here. So if that individual really was trying to get to the website and just get information, they could clearly click off. But it would prompt more individuals, I would think, to actually fill it out, and then we would have more to report on when we have our next meeting. But the other piece was if we were maybe to go in lieu of maybe like a West News Magazine ad, what we could do with that money. And we've learned this from our solar survey that was very popular with this type of response, was that maybe if it's not a postcard, it could maybe be some type of letter that has the QR code and everything along with it. And in that same letter has the availability of like a written input. And it does cost a great bit more to do it that way. But if they would be able to fill it out in paper and then mail it back, which we actually saw with the solar survey that around 70, I believe it was 76% of the respondents actually mailed their response back to us. I don't know if it was just the demographics that were hit, but maybe just bringing those options up so the committee can maybe deliberate and see which one might work best. Thank you.
If I may,
Go ahead.
during getting a ton of phone calls regarding this, my experience was most of the people just had questions about when, how, why, who's doing the inspections, stuff like that. Which is part of the reason for the FAQs and directing them to the FAQs. Most of the people that I spoke with didn't necessarily want to provide input. They wanted to figure out how it was working. And so we could reverse it and send it straight to the provide your input and then direct them from there back to the website. But I don't know that that would be as effective, but we can definitely discuss that further.
Well, I'd kind of say keep it the way it is. My own impression is. I'm stopping at a turn, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think giving them some information that they can actually digest before asking for input right away, I think makes more sense.
Yeah, their
Wait,
questions
wait.
might be answered before they,
Correct.
yeah. So,
Otherwise, you might just be soliciting questions that are already been answered, you know, just to save time and energy.
yeah, absolutely. And that was part of the reason for the FAQs on there, was to save a million
Right.
more phone calls.
Yeah, it's pretty comprehensive, and I mean, if people can get those questions answered, it's suffice, then
Sure.
they don't need to go further, so.
Which is why I was gonna make the statement where, do you have questions or comments? Maybe where you've got complete the button below to complete the form.
Uh-huh.
Maybe say, before you complete the form, please look below to the frequently asked questions to make
Right.
sure that you've got the answers to your questions.
Or I
Or
can
something
s-
along
I
those
can
lines.
Swap those
just
actually
move it.
instead, and then have the FAQs
put
above
that-
it, and then below it have,
There you go.
still have
Yeah,
questions?
Yeah, there you go.
Contact
There you go.
us.
There you go.
Okay, perfect.
I think that's good.
Mhm.
Cool.
Please
So-
stress the fact that we're just joining the group. I think that's critical info.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we had a motion on the floor, and we had a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion, Councilmember Marshall?
The larger rental units. Have you had any feedback from any of the management companies that run those?
Not that I'm aware of. I did not collect everybody's name and where they were from when they called for, like, with these questions, but as far as our, like, big multifamily, no, I haven't received any questions directly from them to my knowledge.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions?
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much for that. That takes us to the last item under planning matters, which is recent development. Oh, Councilmember Clark?
Yeah, I just have one more comment about that, the reoccupancy permit that wasn't germane to the motion, so I wanted to wait about that, but I noticed that, you know, I've had some people ask me also about the 90 days 90 days restriction on the expiration of the inspection, and can it be extended, and is there any way to make it like a twofold expiration date, where if the rental unit is occupied before the end of the 90 days, then 90 days is the number, but if it's still unoccupied, make it like 120, 150 days. So, because if it's not occupied yet, maybe we need to wait until right when they occupy it, because something could happen, you know, in a few days after. And if we give them 90 days, you know, 90 days is a long time. But I just think that if it's unoccupied, giving them more time to get it occupied and not have to do it twice, or have to come back and pay again to have it re-inspected.
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Repetto.
As far as the 90 days is concerned, I feel like 90 days is pretty standard. It's St. Louis counties, it's many of the other municipalities in the area. And typically the 90 days, you know, it's 3 months, and a lot can happen within 3 months. And so when it comes down to it, even a vacant property, a lot can happen in 3 months. Pipes can freeze, you know, there's a lot that can go wrong. And so I think that it's always been a pretty standard number. Like if you happen to have a tenant that moves in within, you know, the 90-day period, then it's fine. Or if you have a tenant that hasn't moved in and they cancel and nobody's moved in, then it's not necessarily like we'll switch the names on it as long as it hasn't been occupied. But we can look further into that number and see if it's more flexible. It seemed easier to be consistent with St. Louis County's regulations, just because, I mean, partly because they're gonna be doing our inspections, and partly because it's consistent with most other municipalities. And I feel like people that own rental property own them in several different municipalities, and having it consistent throughout tends to be easier to keep track of.
And is it, I mean, when we say 90 days, is that 90 days within occupancy, right? Like,
It's 90 days, the 90 days starts the day that like your occupancy inspection passes.
Got it.
So once the occupancy inspection passes, then you have a tenant, that you can find a tenant within those 90 days, or many people that rent property wait until they have a tenant.
Correct. That's what I
Like-
was, that was my point is that
Yeah,
you're probably not gonna do the inspection if you have no tenant that's prepared to, you're gonna do the occupancy when you have somebody that's prepared to occupy.
that's generally how it works. Occasionally we have had people that have had tenants fall through or something like that at other cities that I've worked at.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, very good. Thank you very much for that. The last thing under planning matters is the recent development trends within the city. Does anybody have any questions related to that?
I have a question.
Yeah,
real
Councilor
quick.
Rambo?
Yeah, I just noticed that there's one type of project that's invasive species removal, happens to be in Ward 6. What are we permitting there? I mean, I think we should pay them to get rid of invasive species, but that's just me. So what is that? And are we making it burdensome for people to do the right thing?
Not at all. In fact, in some instances, we'll get a call from a property owner saying they want to remove invasives. They also want to do dead trees. And that's when we say, can we come out? We have basically a 24-hour process for that. The code enforcement officers go out and verify what's been described as what's happening, and then they issue the authorization pretty much while they're there.
Okay, no cost, no nothing, no hassle. Okay, that's a great thing. Okay, good.
A lot of the people that contact us want it because they're concerned about their neighbors saying something and then calling either the code enforcement or police. And so they have that guarantee, that's that security, that they have the authorization to do.
Thank you.
I actually have a question, Director. The good old Durga temple. I've been asking about this for a couple of years, I feel like. I'm just asking again because, and, I have a personal connection to the fact that I drive past it several times every day. And I also, while it's not in my ward, I have a lot of friends and people that live in that particular area and West Glen Farm, or what was right there across the street. Garden Valley. And so, the question keeps coming up, like, it doesn't look like there's any progress being made over there. I drove by this morning and there was a guy coming out of the front door with a wheelbarrow. So, I mean, they're clearly not doing finishing touches on the interior. And there was like powder coming out of this wheelbarrow and stuff. So I remember like maybe 6 months ago, we talked about, you said they were putting in statues and things. And I thought that might be the finishing touches, but I mean, like I said, it clearly looks like they're pouring concrete in there, and like the exterior is just completely in disarray. And at any time you go through there during business hours when workers would be working, there's literally one truck and like two guys that are like standing around. So it just I don't know if it's a financial thing where they're just slow rolling it because of budgetary reasons or what, but it just seems like, I mean, I don't know what the original, I feel like a couple of years ago when this originally started, it feels like the timeline was like a 6 to 9 month project. And I feel like now we're going 2+ years and it doesn't look like there's been any and the reason I'm bringing this up is because a lot of people have come to me and I get contacted regularly with the fact that we're so critical with development in Wildwood, and like when it comes to a subdivision or other developments, we put people through the ringer and make them spend millions of dollars on all these studies and architectural and engineering and blah, blah, blah. And because we're so hardcore about our specific ordinances and the way things are done, and then here we have this project that looks like it's just been thrown by the wayside, no one cares, and these people are just kind of running along their own timeline that may take 5 to 10 years at the rate it's looking like, and there doesn't seem to be any recourse. I just don't know, are there like ways that we can tell them, like, you've got to get this moving and get this cleaned up, or else there'll be fines or something to that effect?
Well, certainly engage St. Louis County and say, please don't support an extension of the building permit.
And what is the reasoning for the extensions that have been continuing to happen?
I have some ideas. When the assistant city engineer and I went out to meet with the leadership group, and this was months ago, they are as equally frustrated with the pace of construction
Okay.
and they made no bones about it in front of the general contractor. They were happy that the statues, the idols had arrived and had been installed. But as we walked through the interior, there was still ceiling, HVAC ceiling work to be done. They have made progress, in my opinion, at least on the outside. It's not that mounds of just rock, dirt and
A
stuff.
little bit, but
Yeah.
you're talking
But
many,
they've
many
not yet,
months.
you know, completed the parking lot area and
And then I guess if that's the case, and that's great to hear that the owners and the leadership are equally as frustrated as we are, which is good. So they're not slow rolling it then. This seems to be a contractor issue. Have we then, as a learning process with this, you know, and once again, as critical as we typically are with developers in general, and developers that are much more reputable and established and investing more into the city than these contractors, you know, can we put in some kind of provisions for future developments of this nature with independent contractors like this that aren't a larger developer, to say like they have to agree, maybe it's a surety bond or something, that they're going to be meeting certain criteria and milestones and timelines, or else they're gonna be fined by the city? Because I mean, I just feel like whoever it is, we could be sitting here a year from now having the same conversation and they maybe not even poured the parking lot yet. I
Clearly
mean,
never been to India.
well,
I'm surprised
we
there's
can
not.
certainly investigate that and
Might be.
so Lee and I will get with the city attorney. We'll do a little investigation and see if there are processes out there that other communities use to guarantee a timely completion to construction.
It just looks like for the size and scope of the project and the timeline behind they are, to have one or two workers out there with one small pickup truck just doesn't seem logistically, you know, like they're focused on getting anything accomplished. And so, and like I said, the Garden Valley residents and those folks that are driving out and they have to face that every single day, aside from the general Wildwood traffic that drives past it to and from, like, it's an eyesore and it's sitting right out there in the open.
We'll see what we can do about the future with, let's say, not necessarily regulation, but something that obviously can encourage timely completion of construction projects. And I'll get with St. Louis County and explain that we've kind of reached the point of no return. If they ask for extensions, we want to know about it before you do it. And then maybe we can get everybody in a room and say, what's going on? Because that hasn't happened either, despite some pleas. They understand the process a little bit. I'll send code enforcement out again tomorrow and we'll see what we can come up with.
Okay.
And I'll give you all an update.
Councilmember Dodwell?
Can we have the owner of the contracting company come to the next city council meeting and explain to the city council what the delays have been, why, and what his timeline is?
I can certainly invite Mr. Green to attend. We'll put it out on the draft agenda to the mayor who approves agenda items. I don't know of a way to require him to be there, but I certainly will invite him.
Okay, Councilmember Clark?
Thank you. I have a question, similar to the one that was just asked. But this one is regarding the new fire station on Wild Horse Creek Road. And if we have found any more information on their timeline for finishing that up. And it too looks pretty bad from Wild Horse Creek Road and has been quite a mess for a while. But in addition, just the timing, if we need to know that because of the roundabout that's going to go in and whether or not they're going to have a clear path over to Ward 1, especially from the new fire station, if that's done before the roundabout and then the closures are going on, just getting them to any emergency that might come up. And that as far this from them at this stage when they're on the west side of 109.
Ms. Clark, I'm going to let Mr. Lee answer the question. He had a conversation with Rick Brown today, our Director of Public Works. I did reach out to Assistant Les Cruz and asked for an update in terms of just their timeline for completion. not heard back from him, I will keep trying.
And I, with the chair's permission.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so in this case, I did speak with our Director of Public Works along with Mr. Bonish this morning. And MoDOT should be with their project abutting practically the project that the Monarch Fire District is putting together. They should be corresponding, and we've reached out to MoDOT to make sure that that has been happening. Typically in those types of projects, they have certain requirements that need to be abided by since it's right there next to their major project. In this case, we have had issues, and echoing Mr. Vunish's sentiment, we've had issues getting, good contact back from Monarch. It is a little bit of a sensitive subject. So that being said, if MoDOT has been doing what they would typically do in this case, it should all be working out just fine. But that being said as well, we have been guaranteed from MoDOT's side that this should not impact traffic until after 2025. So there is going to be more to come. And obviously we'll be communicating this with the committee, with the council, and then obviously with our residents through our e-newsletter and all our traditional communication channels. But it should be happening. But we also have just things to kind of look on the horizon. This year, we probably will go out and let the 109 and BA project as well. So a lot of projects will be occurring in that same vicinity, and traffic control and wear and tear on the streets that are going to be used as secondary access at that point are all going to have to be taken into consideration. It will create quite a disturbance. I'm thinking that it will most likely take place right after that bend in 2025. But we can definitely check back in on that and then report our findings back to the committee.
Thank you. May I follow up on that, Chair?
Yes.
So, yeah, and what should happen, I would say that we need to make sure that we error-proof, not just mistake-proof that process, to make sure that, since it is an issue of, more of us dealing with the fire department getting to where it needs to be. But lost my train of thought. But on another question is this report that you put out, this development trends, that of course I graph it just to make sure I understand it. And it's a really good report. I like it. But I'm wondering on this MyGov, how do we measure the reduction of time and money and resources that we are getting from implementing the MyGov permitting portal? Has that helped us overall, or is it helping with enough that we should continue with that, or was the permitting process before better? I just don't know how to measure.
In this case, I can let Director Vunich speak a little bit further to this on the permitting side. I have been told that it's been helping with permitting, and whenever you get and with work orders and whatnot, that is something that's still being slowly implemented on the public works side. That being said, I have given a directive to go ahead and push forward so we can try to utilize this platform as much as we can in 2024. And as we're going into the budgeting process, we're going to be taking a pretty hard look at MyGov to make sure it's giving us what we need. One thing is that the user interface, and Melanie, I would like to give just complete, gratitude to. She's done an excellent job on the planning side, putting things together and making sure that runs properly. But we have ran into some kinks on the public works side about people being able to report, code enforcement issues. They've gotten weird messages back. So one thing that we would like to do is circle back with MyGov to see if they can help us out. And if they're seeing that potentially that MyGov, if it doesn't work, we might drop a portion of it. I think it's working well with permitting and a couple of the planning matters, which Mr. Vunich could speak to. But on the other side, if it doesn't continue to work, then we would look to potentially push back a little bit and pull some of that back and just have certain sections. Because the good thing about MyGov is that you can have it as implemented as you like. So you can have certain sections where you pay for, and then you can get rid of the other sections. So at this time, I would say the permitting side has been the best feature of it. But Mr. Vunich, would you like to add to that sentiment?
I don't.
Sure, go ahead.
Ms. Clark, I don't necessarily know if I can qualify, at least from my perspective, how much money we've saved or time. I will tell you several things. First and foremost, from the tracking standpoint, being able to respond to a question from a contractor or resident, where are they in the process? This has overwhelmingly made us more efficient in that regard. Secondly, prior to MyGov, we used to require 5 sets of paper copies for everything. And from a standpoint of just the use of resources and the copying cost, we only require now 2 paper copies if someone walks in and none if they do it digitally. And then finally, I would just argue that with St. Louis County now all online, this makes it easier for everybody, the resident, the contractor, the developer, St. Louis County and us, because we're all talking on an online system now. And I think that's an advantage to it as well, just in terms of time savings. Ms. Ripito may know more about cost savings in that, so I'm gonna pass that burden on to her.
As far as quantifying it, I feel like that's difficult. And also when it comes down to it, there's kind of a balance because we are paying for the service. But as far as the amount of staff time that is no longer being utilized for, pulling reports and going through and doing them by hand, as well as Excel spreadsheets and things like that, as well as the permitting component of it. I feel like it's hard to actually quantify that amount of time, but I feel like it's been very beneficial, and it's also enabled us to look up an address and we can see if there's a code enforcement issue going on, or see if there is a permit for a deck that's being built out in the field. I feel that it's opened up communication throughout departments as well, but quantifying it, I can't think of any way of actually doing that.
If I could follow up, Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Teresa.
Thanks. Yeah, and I guess my point is, I think that it looks to me like it has helped a lot. And just pointing out before I'm gone, one more time, pointing out that we need to have a measurement system for all of this so that we can look back and see what did we do over the year, what improvements did we make and how much percent improvement did we make, so that we know how we are moving forward and not just being stagnant.
Ms. Clark, with all due respect, most days we're scrambling just to keep things coming in the door. And when we leave at night, if we basically have addressed most everybody's issue that called or came in or demanded service, I think we've been successful. And I'm sorry if that's not the answer, but I don't know how to create a measurement like you described. I'm not that smart.
Okay. Oh, Councilmember Ottenberg.
Yeah, just 2 quick questions, going back to the subject of the roundabout at 109 in Wild Horse, and then also the new Monarch Fire Station that's under construction as well. What are the approximate, and I emphasize approximate, completion times for both projects or dates?
From the fire district, they had talked to us over the course of the zoning process about needing to have this fire station underway and for all intents and purposes completed by June. I think it was 2023 due to their bond issue. Somehow miraculously, they've continued on with the construction despite that bond issue concern, which was a key component of their case when it was presented to the judge at the St. Louis County Circuit Court. From the perspective of timing now, that's why I've reached out to the assistant chief just to get an idea of where are we. You pulled the grading permit, began development on the site, but we're not seeing progress. And certainly the site isn't what we were told it would be. The roundabout, Obviously, they're underway. I think it's,
I can, oh, I could add a little bit of insight there with the chair's permission.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So on the roundabout of 109 of Wild Horse, the estimated timeline and completion of that roundabout is December of 2025. So it is well out. These projects do take some time, but that is the current estimated timeline. And MoDOT and with the contractor they're working with, typically they do come in on schedule and on time.
Does that answer your question?
Yes,
Councilmember?
thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for the discussion, everybody. That takes us into the parks matters. And the first item on the agenda is the Hardcourt Area and Town Center in Ward 8. Director Budich.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, as you'll recall, the committee spent many months working through a desire to develop a hard court facility that would include pickleball courts and at least one tennis court that would be convertible to 2 half-court basketball facilities. Ultimately, the committee and then city council went through the process of developing the location of the proposed hardcourt area, community park, authorized the development of design and engineering design and engineering plans and bid specifications for that location. And ultimately, it was bid. About that time when the ordinance for the contractor to build the hardcourt facility in Community Park was at City Council, a decision was made to explore Town Center. Town Center, specifically the location where Mr. Cohn and Greenberg Development had proposed pickleball courts of their own. Ultimately, agreement was reached to proceed forward with the new location. And for the most part, we were making good progress regarding that new location until the Greenberg Development project hit a bump in the road. And that bump in the road was Green Street Development. Green Street Development, about the same time that they were going through an architectural review board and working with us on the site development plan, basically stopped all development, retracted many of their outstanding businesses, and now, for the most part, are, I believe, just one person. And so Mr. Cohn had to kind of backtrack and find a new multiple family developer. That has been successful. They now have a memorandum of understanding with a new multiple family developer, but that requires them to basically start over with the architectural component. And there are probably some changes that we'll see on the site development plan, not necessarily the governing ordinance. Saying all of that, for the most part, Mr. Cohn's projection now is spring of 2025 for a startup. And from that perspective, that means we're kind of, if we do nothing, we're tagging along with the pickleball courts, park court facility. So tonight, the department is just identifying that there are some things that we've agreed to do. If one is the development agreement with Mr. Cohn for that pickleball court area. As you know, that was presented here to our committee, and the discussion focused on ensuring that when the time is appropriate, the property will transfer to the city at no cost. And the city will, from inception till the future, will have complete control over the facility and who can use it and who can't, so to speak. It's not resident only. Development is in its initial stages, and so in this particular instance, the department does believe we should proceed, at least until told differently by the committee and city council. There are 3 options. We uncouple ourselves with Mr. Cohn's process and go ahead and start finishing the site development plan, bid specifications and engineered plans, and go out to bid on ourselves, acknowledging that the development agreement will give us rights of use of the property. Secondly, we can just basically continue forward and wait until the spring of 2025, or quite frankly, we abandon the location and go back to either to the original or. So tonight, the department is offering these options, and if there is some desire to do one or the other or none, the department is seeking them. Thank you.
Councilor Rambo.
Yeah, I think this new location was a godsend, given the noise that comes from pickleball facilities and just the proximity to where it's happening in the town center area. I just think it's a great thing. And so I would focus on options number 1 and number 2. And my question for option 1 is, does that drive up the cost to us significantly? Because I know that Mr. Cohen, you know, he's a civic minded guy, and I am thrilled to have him as a partner in this whole thing. And if you think if you think option 1 has legs and it won't significantly increase the cost, that kind of may help us steal a march on this, on his, you know, what would otherwise be his process, and maybe get them done a little bit quicker. Is that a reasonable assumption? And what do you think about the cost?
In terms of the site development plan process to date, and then the future improvement plans, the construction drawings, and et cetera, Mr. Cohen, Greenberg Development, are covering those costs right now for the city. It's all parcel of the 3 phases, the
Okay.
multiple family, the single family, and the recreation amenity. So if we go uncouple and go our own way, we'll basically start incurring costs for all the design and engineering
Okay.
that we are not now at this time.
So would there be any possibility of working with him to recover those costs when his project proceeds forward? Like, in other words, it'd be more like a kind of a loan thing? Is that, I wouldn't suggest it if it were anybody other than Mr. Cohen,
We could
honestly.
certainly make that part of the development agreement, saying that we are proceeding forward with the amenity, but at some point, since he's donating the ground, we wouldn't necessarily have to deduct any costs we incur up to that point for the cost of them. But maybe there's a fee we obtain back, something.
So I would suggest, I'm leading up to a motion, but I don't want to cut off discussion, but I would suggest option 1 with that kind of negotiation with Mr. Cohen, and just forget about option 3. That's fine.
Okay, anybody else? Councilmember Dodwell?
I'll second option 1.
So you're making a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Motion
Yes.
to adopt option 1 with the stipulation of negotiating with Mr. Cohen about.
Yes, yeah, and working it out so
Potential
that it doesn't,
costs.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, and then we got a second on the motion?
Yes, sir.
So now we'll go into discussion on the motion. Anybody have any discussion on the motion? Councilmember Marshall?
So if the option was by the full council to abandon this and go back down to option 3, we as a city would have to pay all of the design work and the,
Oh, it's not, it's
We did that.
We already have it.
okay.
And Director Vunich, was that, I believe the cost structure in community park was around 400,000, is that right? And what is our investment over here in town center with the current agreement, and then what you would foresee with option 1?
To date, there's been 0 outlay of funds to Mr. Cohen and Greenberg Development for any of the work associated with the site here in town center. If we uncouple, so to speak, we'll probably start with Stock and Associates that's doing the engineering work for Greenberg Development, and ask for a cost assessment. They've done a lot of it already. So from that standpoint, I don't see it being excessive, but I believe we spent, I want to say maybe about $60,000 on the engineered plans and bid specifications for the community park site. So maybe somewhere in that range of about half. So we'll incur some costs that we weren't anticipating. And then we've set aside for 2024, $400,000 for construction.
So basically an extra 50 grand potentially
At the most, at the very.
high end to do that, that's what we could negotiate with Mr. Cohen to potentially recapture or get partially of some of that back, but the cost of construction, we already have budgeted.
Yes. Yeah. Greenberg Development.
That is correct.
Greenberg Development never agreed to build. They always had to get us to that point, and then the construction would be under our management, which I prefer, actually.
Councilmember Dodwell?
I'm looking at this from an economic development standpoint, and having it here in town center, I think is critical to it being successful for both the pickle courts themselves and for the businesses that are sitting in town center to be able to draw from those people for lunch traffic, which it's dead here at lunchtime. So if we get some lunch traffic, that would be great. So I fully think we need to move ahead with option 3 and we've already put funds aside.
Option one.
Option
Or
three is
option
community
1, I'm sorry, option 1.
Oh,
Whoa, 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 whoa,
must
whoa,
have
whoa,
dozed
whoa,
off.
I don't know what
Turn
happened. I must have dozed off, sorry, with option 1, because I think we
You had
would
a
be
panic there.
foolish. I think we'd be.
Katie, you're having just as much anxiety as I am that it's 8 o'clock and we're only on the first part of
I know.
parks.
So let's just move forward on a vote. and decide what we're gonna
Okay,
do.
Councilmember Bartoni's got a question?
Joe, just for clarification, is he donating this property to the city? Or will
Yes.
he retain ownership of the property, but we have carte blanche?
For the first couple of years, we'll be under a lease agreement as proposed by Greenberg Development at $10 a year. And then he needs to retain the portion of the property for the financing process. But after a couple of years, then the property would transfer to us as a donation.
Okay, and the reason I ask, I don't think he's ever gonna put a shovel in the ground. I said that 4 years ago, said it 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, and I'm gonna say it 5 years from now also. Uncoupling with him, I think is the best option for this city. So whatever we have to do to get that piece of property and do what we wanna do, let him do what he wants to do, I think the better off we are.
And if the motion's favorable.
That's the motion on the
that's
floor,
the direction we'll head.
So without any further discussion, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries, great. Next on the agenda is Bluffview Park hub sign and the final design for Ward 6, Director Vudish.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, the final design of the hub sign for Bluffview Park has been completed. All parties have reviewed it, provided comments, and the comments have been addressed on the revised design. The cost did increase approximately $1,200. And part is inflation and part is just the additional requirements associated with it. It does include the Braille components as part of the description of the property's history. And so from the perspective of the department, I think we've succeeded in addressing all of the concerns, all of the questions, and all of the comments that were provided. And then our partnering parties have concurred, so the department is seeking a favorable action on the design tonight, so it can proceed forward to city council at May 13th. And then the contractor, designery, begin fabrication.
Councilmember Clark?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we proceed with this as designed and with the Braille. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion on the floor, seconded by Councilmember Rambo. Any discussion on the motion?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Teresa, stay out of my ward.
All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
And any abstentions? All right, very good. That passes. Next on the agenda is the Village Green update on the project's progress in Ward 8, Director Vudish.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, as you can see, as you drive to and from City Hall, the 70+ trees have been removed. The stumps have been ground, these limbs, the trunks have been removed. So for the most part, I think you can see now what the area of Village Green Phase 1 will look like. In terms of next steps, the department is preparing to meet with our general contractor, Bombshell Construction. What we'll do is just go through a question and answer if he has any questions of us. And if I have any questions of him along with the rest of the team, then we'll give him a notice to proceed. And before that notice to proceed is provided, Bombshell Construction will be required to install the siltation under the stormwater pollution prevention plan requirements, as well as all the tree preservation plans, so you're making sure there's no accidents relative to the remaining trees. So there's a couple of intermediary steps before we'll actually see construction begin. Two components of this project is on tonight's agenda as well, and the department is seeking direction and action. The first is the final design and engineered drawings for the relocation of the trash enclosure. I think CDI, the engineering firm, did a nice job. It was removing 4 spaces. And from a parking standpoint, that's positive because we're adding substantially more than that as part of phase 1 in the same general area of City Hall. They've taken into account stormwater management. Drainage from the new trash enclosure will go to the basin on the east side of the building and will be addressed there. And for the most part, as the memorandum describes, the architecture will be very much the same complementary brick to the building. And from the perspective of the department, a different set of doors. If you try to wheel those doors, they're very, very heavy. They're a struggle to work with, and we've had to repair them on several instances just because of the damage associated with them. So from that perspective, I think we just improved. So that's the first item. As the department had noted, the second item is the type of lighting that was chosen for the original bid. It was a bid that was a light standard that was 25 feet in height, so 9 feet taller than what's allowed by the city code. And it was unshielded in many instances. Working with the design team at CDI and Human Nature, another selection has been chosen, and that selection is this kind of unusual or unique component, lighting from the same company and designs, landscape forms, excuse me. And if you're curious, there'll be approximately, bear with me as I find it here. I believe there are 26 proposed standards that will be placed in the oval area as well as the main entry and over by the accessible parking spaces, the Essen log cabin reassembly, and the future mayor's grove. And the design of the standard meets the city's requirements in terms of height, illumination levels, and it is certified by the International Dark Sky Association. They are unusual, but I think they are fitting for Village Green. And so tonight we're presenting them for your consideration as well. So trash and
In the lighting. I see City Administrator Lee had his hand up.
Thank you, Chair Galani. I just wanted to add one other note before construction would start. We are currently working with Bombshell Contracting to install a camera on the flank next to our current trash enclosure, which will be able to capture the entirety of construction so we can post updates of live construction and time-lapse video to show our residents the work that's being done. This will cost a little bit, but it shows, and we'll be able to keep that video footage for the duration of time, and also to show what goes into actually building this project so the residents can see what their $2 million were able to get them. Thank you.
Councilmember Clark?
Thank you, Chair Galani. Yeah, so this, the lighting, does that have to go before the ARB, the Architectural Review Board, since it is a structure and it's not a single family dwelling?
Typically in all of our planned districts, we exempt out fences, retaining walls, and light standards. But certainly if the committee would like this to be reviewed by the Architectural Review Board. they
No,
can.
no, because they won't like Jetson's lighting, and I think it's looks great. It's,
We put in incandescent bulbs in.
Again, it's the committee's discretion. We'll be glad to take it through the process. But for the most part, in town center.
Doesn't sound like there's support for that. No. Is somebody else?
My question is one light on a pole or two?
Two, it's a double head.
Okay,
Okay.
So if you look at the lighting plan, you can see that it's double headed. So if there's 26 standards, that means there'll be 52 of the ring light.
are they pretty energy efficient?
Yes. They are
Those LEDs or, yeah.
And like I said, it was something that was discovered in conjunction with the rest of the team. I think that, again, they promoted in their materials, landscape forms, but with the center being open, you can basically see the sky through the light.
I think it's cool. They're unique and people are gonna love them,
Yeah, it's good.
except for the ARB. convention.
Does anybody else have, Councilmember Ottenberg and then Councilmember Rainbow?
What's the name of the manufacturer of this product?
Landscape Farms. That's the manufacturer of the standard.
Where are they located? Joe, do you know?
I don't know, maybe it's on some of their materials.
I'm just wondering how long they've been in business because I came out of the lighting industry and a lot of lighting manufacturers come and go. You know, I just worry about, or I shouldn't say I worry about it, but one of the things that can happen with a company that specializes in a particular type of lighting is that you know, after that particular product falls out of fashion, they end up going out of business and then replacement parts can be difficult to come by.
At least from the gentleman at Human Nature, the company that did the master plan, he had recommended the use of Landscape Farms for the other light standards, as well as all of the furniture that's going to be part of Village Green Phase One. That's why we kind of started there, be consistent in terms of the improvements. In the memorandum, I also, that's one of the things I'm still working on, is just finding out, okay, if this standard, which is kind of unique, will we be able to get replacements in the future? And what's the status? How long it's been on the market? How long do you anticipate? So I still have some research to do, but we're also in that kind of period, that crunch period where Bombshell Construction wants to get started, and I think we all want them to get started. So trying to get this is an acceptable standard. I'll go ahead and finish all of what I'm doing, get you more information by May 13th and add it to the report as an addendum.
I just looked up their website. They've been in business for 50 years.
Okay, perfect, great.
Once we get lenses and stuff.
Councilmember Rambo?
Yeah, the power lines, now that Kitty and I walked over there and looked for several reasons. The power lines that currently divide City Hall proper with Village Green, those are going underground, right? Okay, because that's quite unsightly. That forestry bulls over there, the Kubota with the fucking head that tore up everything. It's cleaned out. I don't know if you guys saw it or not, but it really feels good. We got access, but it's only the first lot, as I understand it, and there's that row of pine trees and other stuff. Are they gonna go in and do a lot more grinding, or most of those pine trees stay in, or what's?
We'll stay through phase 2 and phase 3.
Oh, great. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's looking good over there. And that large silver maple in front of the cabin site is gone, which means we're gonna have more sun on the roof of the cabin, which means the roof will last longer and we can potentially consider what Mr. Scott's suggested about the shingles. Yeah, yeah.
The silver maple, that was probably the tallest, the largest tree we took down, and I want to assure you that I had Mr. Walsh go over there,
It was gonna go.
and like a lot of, silver
Yeah.
maples, cedars, people have different opinions on them, but he did identify that the trunk, there is already decay, and he basically said it's not a nuisance tree yet, but it will be in a period of time.
Yeah.
So he kind of gave it the okay.
I looked at it, it was end of life. It was gonna die.
Yeah,
So,
I was just, I was concerned because it was a large tree and it did have a really kind of presence there.
So
okay, thank you.
Director Vunich, you're looking for direction from the committee to authorize you to proceed with the plan amendments for the lighting and the trash enclosure? Yep. All right, so we have a motion for that?
That motion.
We got a motion on the floor, second, Councilman Bartoni. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Awesome, thank you very much. The motion carries. And that brings us to the all-inclusive playground area and inventory from Ms. Ripito.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I will try to be brief given our limited time. At the end of last year, the city council and the mayor had requested a discussion and possible action in regards to creating a standalone, accessible, or unlimited playground facility within within the city of Wildwood. This discussion led to more of an expansion of looking into accessible facilities to include all of the city playgrounds, to see what we could do to make all of them more accessible or include accessible features in each. And so it became kind of an audit of our existing playgrounds in addition to the potential standalone playgrounds at Glencoe Park. Since then, the city's engaged a nationally known company called Unlimited Play, who's assisted in developments of playgrounds of this type throughout the local region. The city council authorized a contract between the parties to allow for both the design of the all-inclusive or the unlimited playground as well as the audit. Preliminary work began in 2024, and over the last several months, Unlimited Play has completed mostly 2 designs that are ready for the city's review. And they have not yet started the audit of the other playgrounds, but the department was told that once that starts, it should only be a matter of weeks of being able to complete that audit. So right now, there are 2 designs that are just about ready for review by the departments. And then the department will provide comments, feedback, make sure there aren't any major issues and such, and give a more refined version to the committee. Committee had asked for an update on this at this meeting, but that being said, we can put the 2 designs on the May meeting if that so pleases the committee. And so tonight we're looking for direction on including an agenda item for just the 2 designs, not the audit, correct? Yes. On the May agenda.
Okay.
That's it. The
Okay.
department is here if you have any questions for them.
Okay, so would anybody like to make the motion to include this on the agenda for the May meeting? Oh, Councilmember Clark?
Thank you. Yeah, I will make the motion, but I wanted to just make a comment that recently I heard Tim Shriver, who is the CEO for Special Olympics, and the son of Eunice Kennedy Shriver, who started Special Olympics, and the nephew of John F. K. He said the most important lesson is the profound dignity inherent in every human being. When we honor that dignity, we bring out the best in others and the best in ourselves. And, you know, I look at this project and I think that the staff is going above and beyond what is legally expected of them for disabilities. And I'm so proud to be a part of this group as they are doing it. They're doing it, the whole thing. Chelsea Bayou, she brought this forward, this idea, because of her son who has a white matter brain issue. And just thinking about what the needs are of these children and even the adults, and talking with Joe Benich and his team about it, they have taken this ball and just gone with it. And I am just so proud of them for it. And the things that they're going to change, the lives they're going to change in Wildwood and the surrounding cities is enormous. Excuse me. And just to see that we are respecting people, their dignity, and doing just as Tim Shriver said, we are understanding that it brings out the best in others, but it also brings out the best in ourselves. And this paradigm shift in the city is enormous. And just the things I've seen happen over the 4 years I've been on the council, with adding Braille and looking into areas in the parks for blind access. And there's just so many things that I don't want to take the time to list them now, but I just want to thank you all so much.
Thank you very much for that. And that she made the motion on the floor. Do we have a second, Councilmember Rambo?
Yeah, I'll second the motion, but I also had a
Okay, so we got a motion and a second, and now we'll have discussion. Go ahead.
Yeah, that paradigm shift is due primarily to my colleague, Ms. Clark. And I would go in on plaque that had that very quote on it at this playground at the time, when the time is right. I do think we're providing a service to Eureka and Pacific down there in that particular area as much, if not more so, than we are Wildwood. But you know, a rising tide lifts all boats and all those kinds of things. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to support it. And this price, this $8,500, that's a nit, I think, and we're getting a
Yeah.
lot for the money. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Do
That's
anybody else have anything to say?
Let's
Okay, with
get
no
her
further
done.
discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
I,
Any opposed? And any abstentions? Awesome. Thank you very much. And I agree with the sentiments as well. That was greatly said, Councilmember Clark. Takes us to the last two items on the agenda, which are the Wildwood Recreation Programming, update on current and future offerings, and facility reservations, event registration, and ongoing long-term maintenance costs. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? Anything to do with that? Councilmember Clark?
Sorry, I thought I put my hand out, but I did have something to say about on attachment C. I'm trying to find it right now, sorry. Attachment C. Well, I don't find it. It should include the restrooms that accommodate the various sizes of children that have disabilities and their changing tables. Am I looking at the right one? I think I'm still looking at the paperwork from, oh yeah, I'm still looking at the paperwork from the Inclusive Park. Sorry about that. I didn't turn over enough pages. I can talk to Mr. Vinich later about that.
Okay. All right, anybody else? Okay. Seeing none, we don't have any executive session. And not ready for action. Any questions related to anything on that list? Director Vunich?
I may, well, Ms. Dowell,
Or-
please.
Yeah, Councilman Dowell.
I was gonna ask whether or not we had pulled together a task force for Portland Park yet.
Our question was
Okay.
raised today and by Mr. Lee to me, and we had kind of identified positions, 7 members, 2 of which are representatives from Ward 6. Kind of waiting on whether 5 being identified. The only caveat I added, so then at the start of the year, we had the initial discussion about this group, is that we're kind of rolling into the historic preservation plan. We did receive the grant from State Historic Preservation Office. And surprisingly, if you're not aware, sometime in September, this committee will start talking about the update of the master plan. We're within that window of that 10-year update charter. So there's a lot of goings on. There's a lot of planning components moving forward. So I guess all I would say is if we want to do Portner Park, the sooner the better.
Go ahead.
I guess my question was, number one, has the house been taken down?
Health contracting is finalizing all of the permits with the Department of Public Health
Okay,
relative to lead paint, which there isn't any given the age, but they still have to do it, asbestos and some of the other things.
okay,
So it was a month and a half ago, February, when I gave him the notice for proceed, he said it'd probably be about 2 to 3 months. So I'm expecting now May.
okay, okay. And then number two, on that particular piece of property, do we have scheduled to do any land mowing or anything like that throughout the summer months? And then number three, have we posted any signage indicating that the city owns the property, but there is to be no trespassing, or it's okay if people trespass? I'm just looking at, from legal standpoint.
No signage, but I think it's an excellent suggestion.
I just don't want somebody out there playing around and then It's,
Yeah, that pond's an attractive nuisance for those who know it's back there.
yeah.
Get
Okay.
something worked out.
Awesome. We have no other items for consideration. Our next meeting is gonna be Tuesday, May 21st, 2024. And I'm gonna
Yeah, I have a question.
get on. Give me 1 second, Councilman Carter. I just wanted to say, miscellaneous is just, first of all, I just want to thank everybody on this committee for being a part of this committee, for the past year, and I've enjoyed it. And it's been a pleasure to serve as chair and have some great discussions and finish on timely.
Oh, man,
I mean,
yes.
I think we're
I got-
always find a way to get to where we need to go. And we have a lot of great discussion, which is awesome too. And then I also, and I know we kind of went through this a little bit last meeting because we weren't sure if things would have changed by now, but obviously everybody won't be here at the next meeting in May. We might have different members of the committee that are on council. Hopefully, all of you that are still on council will be in here as well myself. And I just wanted to say a special thank you to Councilmember Clark, Councilmember Bartoni, and Councilmember Flasher, who's not here today, but thank you for your service on council in general. And thank you for your service on this committee as well. It's been a pleasure and enjoyed serving with you. So, Councilmember Clark.
Well, thank you so much for what you've done. You've done a fine job, Chair Galani. So we really appreciate what you've done. But I had one thing for miscellaneous, if I might. Is there a new date for the landscape planting ad hoc committee?
Ms. Clark, I'm still shooting for the week of April 29th. All fails, it would be then the week of May 4th, but we'll have something before it turns in. So you can kind of draw some closure to it all.
Yeah, we can get something to review before.
Then the last thing I did think, which I meant to thank as well as the department, you guys have done a phenomenal job in preparing all the agenda and having everything in order for us and keeping things moving. And to Councilmember Clark's point earlier, the extra effort and the above and beyond getting things done. So we appreciate all the work you do and thank you for that very much. So, anybody else? Councilmember Otmar?
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Well, no, we got 4 minutes to go and so I'm gonna try to, be.
Councilmember Rambo, go ahead.
That's something else.
Minutes to say goodbye.
Mike. It takes me 4 minutes to do just about anything. I do have a question that was prompted by our discussion about YouGov. The GIS replacement, we used to pay for it and maybe I was the only person that used it, but you could click on a parcel and it would tell you the parcel and you could get all the information about every bit of Wildwood. And that's been replaced with the county's website that you might get the parcel info or something like that. You get the tax info. It's just not nearly as useful. And I'm wondering, were we like shedding a significant cost or was it just a decision that, oh, nobody uses it anyway, or what the heck is up with that? Because I think it was very useful.
Well, we did shed a significant cost because I believe the last bill was like $28,000
Per year?
Yeah.
Really?
That
Okay.
is correct. Yeah, it was around 28.
And then more importantly, given the skills that Ms. Ripito has in this particular area, she kind of took charge of it and we just really didn't get a very good response from the company in terms of our expectations. They would not reach out to county at our request and get new mapping. We still had aerial photography from
Yeah, it's old.
2012, I
Yes.
think it was, something like that.
It was, I believe, earlier than that.
Other than that.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're paying you $28,000, not just to host this, but to basically keep it up to date. And they weren't very responsive. And the only time we got a response is when we told them we weren't coming back. And then they tried to basically say, we'll do what you ask. And it's like, we think it's a little too late. Given Ms. Ripito's capabilities in this regard, I think we can do something maybe to address some of your concerns?
Yeah, it was ever so handy and useful. And yeah, the satellite photos themselves were aged.
Yeah.
And the counties know better, but I don't think it's a lot worse. But it was just, you could click on it and get the names of the owners and those kinds of, and it's handy from, not just for me as a nosy person, but for me as a council person. And so,
The county's database will give you the ownership information, tax address, mailing address, it'll give you sales data. It doesn't give you the wards like ours did, it doesn't, but most of the information on Beacon, which was the company that provided the service, came from the county database.
it breaks down exactly the same. Oh, I'm
Sorry.
yeah, I've got 50 seconds. But it breaks down the same way as the tax records on the county's website, and it's this, you've got to wade through a bunch of things that don't matter to get to where you want to go. So it's cumbersome.
We'll see what we can do.
And I mean, just add that to Melanie's list, because she's probably got a couple of free evenings she can work on. So
All right.
20 seconds.
We
to
got a
go.
motion on the floor for adjournment. I have a second for that. Councilman Donwell, or Martelli, we'll let you have your last second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Get it
of
in the
motion,
minutes.
please say- Any discussion on the motion?
No.
Favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? And we got done at.
All right.
8:30.
Exact, precise. It was precise to the
Got
second this time.
it. You got your 4 minutes in. I was worried at 8